Ask most couples what the biggest financial threat to their marriage is, and they'll usually say debt, student loans, or overspending. Yes, those things hurt. But the real threat appears when one household slowly becomes the financial safety net for five other adults. Mom needs help with rent this month. My brother's car broke down. He needs a little to cover the repair. And because you love your partner, and because you understand what family means, you say yes. You say yes the first time. You say yes the second time. By the third time, nobody asks anymore. It's expected. And somewhere between the first transfer and the 15th, something shifts. Your marriage stops being a two-person money team and gradually turns into the unofficial bank for several other households. One marriage, multiple people pulling from it. Yet, at no point did the couple ever sit down and consciously agree to that arrangement. And the third effect this creates inside a marriage, that's the one most couples never recover from. We'll get to that in a minute. Now, people will frame this as a conversation about values, generosity, loyalty, duty, but think about it differently for a second. What's actually happening here is a money problem. Two separate money systems are running inside one home, and nobody set the rules for how they work together. One system is the couple trying to build their life. The other is the family outside pulling from that same pool. And the tension doesn't come from one person being selfish and the other being generous. It comes from nobody having designed how these two things coexist. Here's how a marriage is supposed to work with money. Two people put their income together, they cover the bills. Whatever's left over after the bills, that's the engine. That leftover money is what lets them save, invest, buy a house, raise kids, and handle surprises. That leftover is the marriage's future. Now here's what happens when helping family enters the picture. Some of that leftover gets rerouted, not into the couple's future, but into someone else's present. And by itself? One time? That's fine. People help family. That's normal. The problem is what happens to the pattern after that first time. Because once you start helping someone financially, something happens on their end. The person getting help starts to adjust. Their planning quietly starts to include your money. The pressure they felt to solve the underlying problem, it eases up. Not because they're lazy or ungrateful, but because the sharp edge of the problem has been softened. Think of it like this. If your roof has a small leak and someone keeps placing a bucket under it for you, you're less likely to call a roofer this week. The bucket is handling the problem for now, so the urgency drops. Economists have a name for this. It is called moral hazard. It describes a situation where the consequences of a problem are softened or absorbed by someone else, which quietly reduces the pressure to solve the problem at its source. That's not a character flaw. That's how people respond to their situation. And on your side of it, a pattern sets in too. The first time was a choice. The second time was compassion. The third time became a precedent. And precedent, in anything involving money, eventually starts to feel like an obligation. Nobody signed a contract. Nobody agreed to a monthly payment. But the pattern now works like one. So let's slow this down for a second and run the numbers together. Say a couple brings home $7,000 a month combined. After rent, utilities, groceries, transportation, insurance, their bills come to about $5,800. So that leaves $1,200. That's the breathing room. Remember that number. Now one partner sends $400 a month to family. Maybe it's a parent's medication. Maybe it's a sibling's phone bill and groceries. What it's for doesn't matter as much as what it does to the structure. That $1,200 breathing room is now $800. That's a 33% drop in what the household has to work with from a single recurring transfer. And here's what's wild. The money part isn't even the most damaging piece. The real effect shows up later, inside the relationship itself. We'll come back to that. But first, here's where things start to add up. Over 5 years, that $400 a month adds up to $24,000. Over 10 years, $48,000. If that same money had been put into even a basic investment, the household is looking at somewhere between $60,000 and $70,000 in missed growth. That's not opinion. That's arithmetic. And what does that missing money actually mean in real life? It's the emergency fund that never fully gets built. It's the down payment on a house that stays 2 years away for 5 years. It's the decision not to have a second child because the numbers don't feel safe enough. It's the career change one partner wants to make but can't, because there's nothing underneath to catch them if it doesn't work. None of these consequences announce themselves. Nobody in the family says, because you helped me, you now can't buy a house. But the math says it, every single month. Now here's where the whole thing starts to trap both sides. The person getting help begins to plan around it. Maybe they stop setting money aside for emergencies because they know you'll cover the gap. Maybe they take on a lease they can't quite handle because your help has become part of their mental budget. Maybe they stop looking for better work, not deliberately, but because the sharpest edge of the problem has been dulled. Over time, you start to feel responsible, not from pressure. Stopping now would feel cruel. You've seen the relief on someone's face when you helped. Walking that back feels like punishment, even when keeping it going is hurting your marriage. So the giver can't stop without guilt. The receiver can't adjust without disruption. And the marriage funding, all of it absorbs the cost of both. And this thing doesn't stay flat. Obligation without limits grows. A sibling who borrowed once starts calling every few months. A cousin hears you helped your brother, and now there's a request from a direction you didn't see coming. The circle gets wider. And it's not because anyone is greedy. Need rarely stays the same. Problems multiply. And once you've been tagged as the household that helps, every new problem in the family finds its way to your door. And each time you help, the people around you quietly adjust their idea of what you can afford. The baseline shifts up, so the next request isn't for the same amount. It's for a little more, and it feels just as reasonable as the first one. And in a few minutes, you'll see the real consequence of this. But first, let's talk about what this does inside the relationship. Not the money itself, but what the money actually changes. The first thing that shifts is how decisions get made. When a household has healthy breathing room, decisions feel open. Should we take that trip? Should we look at a bigger place? Should we start trying for a baby? Those conversations feel light because the money allows them to feel light. But when the leftover is already spoken for before the couple even gets to dream, the tone changes. Conversations get tighter, more careful, more loaded. One partner starts to feel like they're asking permission to spend their own money. The other feels like every purchase is being weighed against what's going out the door. And resentment doesn't show up loud. It shows up as silence. Both sides avoid the conversation as the topic feels too heavy to touch, so nobody touches it. The second thing that shifts is the balance of power. Who gets to decide how much goes out? Who gets to say when it stops? If one partner says no to a transfer, are they being reasonable or controlling? If the other insists on continuing, are they being loyal or reckless? These questions don't have clean answers. And that's the problem. The couple is now making money decisions that carry emotional weight neither of them knows how to handle. So they don't handle them, they avoid them. And avoidance in anything involving money always makes things worse over time. The third shift is the quietest, and it's the one that reshapes the marriage for good. Ambition. Couples with breathing room take risks. They start businesses, they switch careers, they move to new cities, they invest. Couples without breathing room don't. Not because they lack drive, but because every risk needs a safety net, and their safety net has been redirected somewhere else. So the household doesn't only lose money, it loses options. The ability to say yes to something that could change everything. And when you lose options over 5 or 10 years, it doesn't delay the life you wanted. It replaces it with a smaller one. So where does all of this leave a couple? Not with a rule about whether to help family or not. That's a personal call, and it always will be. But here's what the setup tells us. A marriage is a two-person money system by design. Two people, shared income, shared bills, shared future. Every money decision inside that system either builds toward that future or borrows from it. Helping family isn't wrong, but it is an outside claim on a closed system. And when outside claims come in without clear rules, the system doesn't break right away. It bends. Slowly. Until one day the couple looks around and realizes they've been funding obligations they never agreed to, at the cost of goals they never gave up on. That's the trap. Nobody chose it. It simply built itself one small transfer at a time. The couples who navigate this well aren't the ones who refuse to help. They're the ones who sit down together and decide. What goes out? How much? For how long? And under what conditions? They protect the marriage by being honest about what it can carry. And maybe that's the simplest way to think about it. Helping family isn't the problem. The problem is when nobody draws a line. And the marriage quietly pays for that silence, month after month, year after year. It was never about being selfish or being generous. It was about whether two people agreed on what their money was for before someone else decided for them.